everybody, this is Kay, and thank you for joining me today here on my channel, Gigi's Paper Treasures. I have a fun little project to share with you today, making a little mini book, and this is using a binding method that I just recently learned myself from another YouTuber, and I will link her video below. Her name is Gina, so I'll put the link to her video below. But this is a new kind of binding. Like I said, I just learned it, which is called the Blizzard binding. And this is what it looks like in the book. This is a completed book. I made 3 of these in one day, actually in just a couple of hours, actually. They're really quick and easy and fun to make. And so I wanted to share this with you. Again, it's called the Blizzard binding. And these are the 3 that I made. And this also worked out perfectly for me because I have several of these little thread crochet doilies that I made on a recent trip with my husband, a recent road trip. And I've been looking for a way to use them, and I used them as kind of the decoration on the front and spine of these 3 little mini books. So I'm going to share this project with you today, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get some inspiration. If you like what you see today, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and you can click that notification bell too to remind you of whenever I upload new videos. So what you need to do this project with is a 12 by, well, I'm starting with a 12 by 12, but I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to start with a 12 by 6. What you need to remember with this project is you can use any size paper you have, but you want to start off with one that is twice as long as it is wide. So I'm going to cut this down at 6 inches, so I have a 6 by 12 piece of paper. And I'm going to use one of the 6 by 12s for the actual binding part, and I'm going to use the other half to make my covers and my closure with. So that's just something you need to keep in mind when making this project, is you need a piece of paper that is twice as long as it is tall. So you can use anything you have, just remember that principle. And I'm just using 12 by 12 because that's like the widest piece of paper I have. Another thing to keep in mind is it's better to just use paper, not cardstock. Now this comes from a scrapbook pad I've had for quite some time, and it's a little bit thicker than just regular plain copy paper, but it's not cardstock, and I don't think this project would work very well with cardstock because there's a lot of folding involved, and it would end up too bulky and it'd be too hard to get the folds nice and even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the right side down, and you can use double-sided, but I don't know of a whole lot of plain scrapbook paper that comes double-sided, and this side is not going to show anyway. So you can use your one-sided scrapbook paper for this. But I'm going to start off just by folding this in half. And another thing to keep in mind is try to make your folds as accurate and even as possible. And, you know, that's always been kind of a little bit of a struggle for me, but I'm taking my time and I'm trying to, you know, even up my edges as close as I can. And I'm going to also just really crease down all my folds, okay? So in half lengthwise, and then I'm going to take each of these open ends and fold that in half. So I'm taking the raw edge all the way even with that first fold. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. It's a little bit hard to do this on camera because I keep wanting to just stick my head over it, and I know that that'll block the camera, so I'm doing the best I can here. Okay, and then you also want to fold each of these in half. So I'm going to kind of open it up halfway, And I'm going to take this fold and fold it up to that middle crease like so. This is a little tricky here. Let me turn it this way. And then I'm also going to take this fold and fold it up. So what you're going to end up with is 8 sections going this way. And in essence, an accordion fold to begin with. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to take this fold up to that middle fold. Just getting it as close to that fold without going over it. Crease that, and then take this one up as well. Take my bone folder and really make my creases sharp. So you have a bit of an accordion fold. But what I want to do here is I want to turn it the opposite way as what I have it, because I want the white side actually showing to begin with. This is what's going to show on our binding. But for the next part of this folding process, you want your white side out, like this. So I'm going to do that. Crease it real good one more time this direction, and then we'll go on to the next fold. Okay, so you have this, and basically an accordion fold with your white side, or the wrong side. If you happen to be using double-sided, you want the side that only one side is going to show. So you want that side on the inside. Now we're going to move on to the next part, and I'm going to start on one end like this, and I'm just going to fold each of these corners down so that it's lined up down here on the bottom, like so. I'm going to do the same on this end. Okay, and then I'm going to fold that over, and I'm going to do the same on this one. Sometimes it helps if you like put a fingernail right there at that corner to help get that initial bend in the corner. But you don't want to fold it past the crease. That will kind of impede the whole folding. And same on this side. Okay, and then I'm going to turn that over and continue the process with the rest of these folds. I'm sure you probably noticed, so on that last flap you want to fold them to the back, not towards you, because you want the blue to show on both of these outside corners and all the way throughout the binding, like that. Alright, from this point, what you want to do is you want to unfold the whole thing. So I'm going to go through and just kind of turn all of these corners back up and open this thing up like this. Now you can see on these 3 middle sections that you have kind of a triangle like this. What we're going to do here is we're going to invert each one of those triangles on each end like that. And these 2 end flaps just get folded back under like that. So you're going to invert and close, invert and close, and then these 2 end ones, like I said, just get folded under like that. Okay, now what you want to do is you kind of want to put it in this direction and open your first flap like so, and you're going to take your top corner and fold it down and just try and get it. It helps if you try and line up this point with that center crease. And then fold that flat. And I can already tell that my folding is a little bit not even. I'm going to have to fix that later. But that's basically, wait a minute. Okay, sorry, I got confused there for a second. So yes, you're going to open up your first flat, kind of fold and fold down that corner, trying to line that point up with the center as best as possible, and the bottom one up sort of to meet it there, like so, and crease those down. Okay, then turn your next page and do the same thing with your top. And your bottom. My folding has not been perfect. I can see how that corner is kind of jacked up. I'm going to have to do something about that. I'm not sure how I'm going to fix that. And see how my points didn't meet. So this one, I think I'm being a little bit messy because I'm trying to do it under the camera without really looking at it too closely. But this is how you do this next step. My other ones turned out a lot more even, so I think it just has something to do with doing it under the camera. So this is what you end up with. This is your binding, your blizzard binding. Now, I'm having the same trouble here. I ran into this on a couple of my other ones with these end folds where I had like some kind of getting folded over and overhanging like this. But I simply went and trimmed them off, even with the edge of the book, like so. And it turned out okay. So I'm going to do that before we go on to the next step, which is actually putting on the cover and the closure. And see how that's folded over? Well, I'm just going to open that out and kind of trim that off. For my covers, I'm going to use a couple of pieces of some chipboard, which I already cut. And what you want to do, depending on the size of your binding piece, is you want your cover to be slightly larger than going this direction than your binding piece. And then you can make it any length this way you want. I did it 4.5 so that I could use 8.5 sheets of paper inside, and they would fit inside this nicely without having to trim off, you know, an 8.5 by 11 any shorter. So my cover pieces are 4.5 by 3 3/8. but yours will be depending on, you know, that's the size I'm making, and it depends on what size your binding ends up turning out to be. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to take that other piece of the scrapbook paper, the other 6x12, and I'm going to cover these pieces of chipboard with it, and I'm also going to cover this little piece, which is going to be my closure. This is 2.5 by 1, and I'll show you how I did that on one of my other pieces. Was I'm going to score it to make it like a 1/2 inch there, and I glued it back here. On this particular one, I used a magnet. On the other two, I used a little piece of Velcro. I really think I prefer the Velcro method, but I'm also going to cover that piece to use as my closure in the same manner that I'm going to cover these. So I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac. That's what I have in this bottle. And I'm just going to proceed to cover these with the rest of the scrapbook paper. And you've probably seen me or other YouTubers cover chipboard or book covers in the same manner. So I'm going to kind of speed this up. I don't have quite enough of the scrapbook paper to cover the insides of my covers, so I just went to my scrap box and grabbed a scrap of some kind of craft paper, and I cut it down to just slightly smaller than the cover to put on here to cover the insides. Now I did have enough for the closure piece, so I'm going to glue that on there for the closure, and these for the front and back covers. Alright, so I've got these pieces ready to go, and basically what I'm going to do is, they both look the same, so it doesn't really matter which one is the front and which one is the back, but I'm going to attach it with the spine of my little blizzard binding piece right even with the edge of one of my cover pieces. and just kind of eyeballing, leaving the same amount of space on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to put glue all over this side of my blizzard binding piece, and I'm just going to cover that pretty good with some glue. I like using this Fabri-Tac. It's really strong glue, but it also gives you a few seconds to kind of maneuver things around a little if you don't get them placed perfectly even to begin with. You've got a few precious seconds, and I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to kind of put it down on my table and push just to make sure I've got that spine edge even with the edge of my cover piece. And I'm just kind of eyeballing, you know, top and bottom to make sure it's kind of in the middle. Doesn't have to be perfect, I guess. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other cover piece. I'm going to put it on all over this side and glue that on, trying to get it as even as possible with the other cover. So this is what we have now, front and back cover attached with the binding piece in the middle. Now for the closure, I have this 2.5 by 1 inch piece, and I'm going to grab my scoreboard here and put it on there, and I'm going to score it at 1 and 1.5. So basically I have a 1 inch piece section on either end with a 1/2 inch section in the middle, like so. I'm going to score that pretty good because that's chipboard in there. And what that does is it gives us the space we need for this book to put pages and other things inside this book. So I'm going to fold that down there and fold. This was some pretty sturdy chipboard, so it's, oh, it's cracking a little. I can always go back and fix that with some distress ink or something. But I'm just going to kind of fold it on those score lines and put this away. And then that's going to attach to the back. And then I'm going to put a little Velcro closure on the front. So I'm going to attach the back part first and let that glue kind of set for a minute. And then we'll add the Velcro and we'll add our pages in. So I'm going to get that positioned where I want it. I'm going to put glue all over the inside of one of these kind of 1 by 1 inch sections of this closure. And there's other closure methods I'm sure you can use. This is just the one that I picked to do these little books with. So I'm just going to kind of line it up in the middle, kind of eyeballing it. And I'm going to actually just kind of hold this down for a few minutes while that glue sets. I'm actually going to wait and add my Velcro closure at the very end, so that glue on there has plenty of time to set. So in the meantime, we can put our pages in. So for the pages for this, you have to measure whatever size you have horizontally inside these triangle flaps is how high, top to bottom, your piece is. For my size, my pieces are 8.5 by 3. And that is basically an 8.5 by 11, and in this case actually I used some sketch paper which was 9 by 12, so I had to cut it down to 8.5, and then I got 4 pieces out of one of those pieces of sketch book paper. But you're just going to fold it in half like that, and these slip in here like so. They go under these little triangular flaps. And that's our first page. Just kind of gotta line it up with the crease. And you can see how some of my white is showing here. Oops, I'm not in frame, sorry. I didn't do as good a job on this one with my folding because trying to do it under camera is a lot more difficult than doing it not under the camera because you can look closer. But basically, you get the idea of how this is made, and it's super fun to make them. I mean, it didn't turn out terrible, and I can always take some ink and cover up those edges of white that are showing. But this particular size that I did today will only hold 4, if you want to call them signatures or pages. And so that's what I'm putting in here is just 4 single pages. One under each of my little triangular flaps of this blizzard binding. You can maybe put more than 1 page in each section, but I'm choosing to just put 1 on this particular one. But I want to show you a couple of things in the other ones that I made that I did a little bit differently once I get these in here. Okay, and so there are our pages. So I'm still kind of waiting for the glue to dry on this closure, so I'm going to set that aside for a minute and show you a couple of things that I did on these other ones that I made. Now on this one, I basically just left it just like that one I just did. I just put my pages in and left it like it is, 1 page per signature. One thing I did notice on these is that in between some of these pages, you know, they don't come all the way apart, but these little spaces in here make perfect little tuck spots for different things that can be added to your little book, like tags or extra journaling spots or you know, ephemera or whatever. You've got in between each one of these sections, you've got a couple little tuck spots, which I haven't tucked anything into these, but you can. So, and there's a little extra space by giving it that 1/2 inch kind of space on the closure. You know, there is more space to put more stuff into these. Not a lot, because they are a mini book, but a little bit. On this one, what I decided to do was turn these 2 end pages into a little pocket. Because if you notice, let me go back to this one, this first page doesn't, you know, it's not loose like this. Because we glued that in to the covers, you don't have that leeway in this first page. So what I did on this one was I folded it under and glued it and along the bottom and just made a little tuck spot there. And I did that on the back cover of this one as well. On this one, I didn't do that on the front. I left it alone, but I added 2 pages per signature. So I put in my normal size pages, and then I added an additional like shorter page just to add a little bit more interest, and those can be journaled on, or pictures can be tucked into there, or you could even glue them down maybe and make another little tuck spot. But I just wanted to do that to see, you know, if I could get more than 1 page in per signature in this particular type of binding, which you can. So, you know, I don't know if you'd want to put a whole lot under each of these holding, I don't know what to call that, hinges maybe, but you know, you can put a couple of different pieces as long as they're not like thick paper. So that's what I did on that one. And then I used a doily and a little butterfly brad to decorate that cover. This one has the Velcro closure. This one has the magnetic closure, and I just used a doily on that. I didn't add anything to it. And then this one, I used one of my doilies and a little piece of lace under it. And it has the Velcro closure. This is another one of the doilies that I made while we were traveling, and I thought the color, you know, it had the blue in there, would go nicely on this particular book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it. It is a little bit taller up and down, but I don't think that's not going to impede the opening and closing of the little book. So I'm going to use this one, and I think I'm just going to use it. I'm not going to add anything extra to it. So I'm going to kind of position it where I want it and then unfold it, and I'm just going to put glue along some of the edges. This Fabri-Tac, I don't like it. It kind of dries shiny, so I want to be sure that I don't get my glue anywhere where it's going to kind of show through. So I'm just going to kind of go around the outer edge and on some of these spots, but I'm not going to put glue on the sections that will be hanging over on the top and bottom. I'm just going to add it here, and then just kind of fold that over. Hold it in place while this side dries for a few minutes. And then I'm going to flip it over and do the same on the back side. I don't put any glue along the spine part because I believe that would kind of impede the opening and closing of the book. So I just put it on the parts that are going to be attached to the front and back covers. I have one of these little mini Velcro dots that I'm going to use for my closure, and these do have adhesive on them, but I'm going to try and get it unstuck from my finger. I'm still going to use a little dot of glue just for extra adhesion, just a dot though, because it could squish out the end and then you know, glue your pieces of your dot together, and then you wouldn't be able to get your piece open. So I'm going to place it on the closure like that, about in the middle, fairly close to the edge. And then I'm going to put another little dot of glue. And when I close it, I'm going to let the lid kind of lift up so that I have that space. And I'm going to hold it in place there while that glue sets, because I don't want to have it closed up with this, you know, tight together. This, by doing it, by kind of holding this cover up to the closure part, it's kind of leaving that space in there. I'm going to grab it actually like this and hold it for a few seconds while that glue dries. I'm going to add one more little touch to these little books before I wrap up this video, and that is these little paper flowers. I got these in a little package from Hobby Lobby, and I just thought they would look cute on the closures, so I'm going to do that real quick. I'm just going to put a dab of glue and add those to the closures. That is all I have for this video today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you get some inspiration from it and try to make one of these little books with the blizzard binding for yourselves. And I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you so much.